what we're going to talk about is how to let your emotions out in a healthy way. So my name's Dana Northard. I'm a counselor and an intern over at Counseling Services. So the first thing to understand when looking at emotions is what emotions actually are. And there is a movie coming out this summer. It's a Pixar movie that I'm super excited about, so we'll watch a preview about it, okay? I don't know how loud this is going to be. A little quiet.
Hands up, everybody! It's showtime!
Grab shell, dude!
Ready?
Ready!
Oh boy, oh boy!
Look it.
You got a problem, buddy? Do you?
Where is my super suit? Spit that out right now!
You mean you don't like me?
So long, partner.
I'm joy. This is sadness. That's anger. This is disgust. And that's fear. Come on, group hug. You too, anger.
Don't touch me.
All right, so I'm really excited about that movie because, for one thing, it just looks really cute, and for another thing, a lot of times emotions in our culture are not encouraged. We're not encouraged to show our emotions. And what's kind of cool about that movie that's coming out is that some of the basic emotions, the majority of the basic emotions are represented. So it's a way to teach kids how emotions work, how they affect you, and how they interact with each other. So the one emotion that's on this slide that's not actually represented in that movie is surprise or excitement. But these are the basic emotions as have come across through study how emotions begin, they can turn into other things. And sometimes we experience a combination of multiple emotions. But when really looking down at the basic emotions, there's what's called an action tendency. So when you're experiencing a particular emotion, there's a certain thing that your mind and your body will tell you to do to react because of that emotion. So when people get angry, there's a tendency to either come forward and fight or to defend oneself. So that's more of that fight, of the fight or flight side of things. The next one is sadness. When we get sad, a lot of times we want to reach out for comfort, or we want to withdraw. If we feel like we're not going to get that support that we're looking for, we'll kind of withdraw from other people. Having surprise or excitement is more of an opening type of emotion. We want to explore more and get in touch with our environment a little bit more. Disgust and shame. So shame is kind of conceptualized as disgust turned inward, when you're really just appalled by something that you've done. That's when shame comes in. And pretty much anybody who's feeling shame, they want to curl up into a ball. They don't want people to see them. So that's the action tendency for shame or disgust. And disgust is more towards other people. If you get disgusted by someone or something, you want to get away from it. Fear can be more of that flee or freeze side of things when you're confronted with something. And oftentimes when we're feeling fearful, we'll give up on our goals. And then the last one is joy. And usually, again, when we're feeling joyful, this is another emotion that makes us want to open up more and make contact with people. So the thing about emotions is that they can all feel really vulnerable. And while some of these emotions may seem more vulnerable than others, they all have the same potential to help us feel connected to other people and also make us feel separated from people. So when any of these feelings are invalidated, we feel separated from others. And when these emotions are validated by other people, that's when we tend to feel more connected. So there's been studies on facial expressions and emotions to try to better understand the universality of emotions. It used to be understood that emotions were, or facial expressions were all universal. More recent studies have found that there's some small cultural differences in facial expressions. But when we're talking about the basic emotions, those are more universal when it comes to facial expressions. So there's this study that was done. I don't think I need to explain it because I think they explain it pretty well in this video. So we'll watch a little bit of this clip. And it's muted.
We can tell how other people are feeling just by looking at them. When someone is happy, they smile. When they are sad, they frown. But where do these facial expressions come from? Are they learned or are they innate? David Matsumoto studied these questions for years in his Culture and Emotion Research Lab at San Francisco State.
Facial expressions are so important because they are part of a nonverbal communication system that we all have that we use extensively when we communicate with others. Facial expressions comment on the words in many different ways so that you know that a person may be joking or they may be very serious. I think this is why we have emoticons in email. Facial expressions are very difficult to study in the lab because when people are in a lab, they're watching what they're doing. And so oftentimes what you get in the laboratory is not what occurs in real life.
David realized there was a better setting to study expressions, the 2004 Summer Olympic Games. It just so happened he was headed there anyway, as a researcher for the International Judo Federation.
And the Olympics is the perfect place to do one of these studies because it's real life, it's naturalistic, it's very emotional.
He then turned his eye and the camera toward the Paralympic Games.
By studying the expressions of the blind athletes in the Paralympic Games, and then comparing them to the expressions of the athletes in the sighted, the regular Olympic Games, we can tell whether they have the same expressions or not.
And the result?
Those who won showed signs of true enjoyment. Those who lost showed sadness or distress or fear or anger. And they were the exact same facial muscle movements that occurred in both the sighted and the blind. They occurred at both exactly the same times in exactly the same ways. And they differentiated winners and losers in exactly the same ways. And so the findings were amazingly similar. So the study of the blind athletes in the Paralympic Games showed us conclusively that the source of facial expressions of emotions must be resident in some innate biological program that we all have, that we're born with, and that we have from birth, and that everybody all around the world, as long as you're a human, has that. And I think.
Okay, so that's one really creative way of studying emotions through facial expressions. And another thing that's cool about that, about him going to the Olympics, is that he's studying people from all over the world. It's not just based on a specific culture. So when we get down to it, emotions really are more of an innate response. There's something that are natural that we're supposed to have, and that there's benefits to having emotions. So of the things that emotions do for us, the biggest thing that they do is that they're communicators. Our facial expressions help us communicate with other people, how we're feeling. We can also empathize with other people. Our brains have what are called mirror neurons. And so one of the things that mirror neurons do is they subconsciously help us pick up behaviors and emotions from other people. So if you ever see somebody yawn and it makes you yawn, that's a mirror neuron kind of communicating to your brain that you should be doing that too. And similarly with emotions, if you've ever watched somebody cry and it made you sad, if you watched a movie, you know it's just a movie, but just watching people go through emotional experiences that way is another way those work. And our emotions also help influence people. So it's not just them influencing us, but it's a way for us to get into contact with others. So if there's language barriers, if there's anything getting in the way that words are not communicating appropriately, our emotions can oftentimes get through to other people. So whether we intend to or not, our emotions are going to communicate for us. The other thing they do, we kind of touched on already, is that they urge us to take action about something. So whenever you have an emotion, it's sending you some sort of message that you should be doing something. Sometimes this message is to get away from something that's dangerous or try to reach out to someone who feels comforting, and different things like that. So our brains are really hardwired to motivate our behavior through our emotions. They also provide more information in a situation. So if you've ever gotten into a situation where once you got there it didn't feel like you thought it would, our emotions can help us cue into what's off, what's not right about this, or what's new about it, what do you want to learn more about. And they can also help us overcome different obstacles. So these can be obstacles in our mind or obstacles in our environment. So if something's not working out logically, your emotions can help you make decisions. And then finally, our emotions are self-validating. If you've ever gotten a bad grade on a test and nobody really cared, your emotions can help tell you, yeah, that was important. Yeah, that sucks. And they can also help you validate how other people feel. But again, another thing that emotions can do is they make us vulnerable. So even an emotion like joy can make us vulnerable to share that with someone else because you're exposing yourself. You're saying, this is who I am, this is how I'm feeling, and leaving it kind of out there open for other people to accept or reject. So I thought this is a cute little quote. Love is the kiss of porcupines. Two porcupines huddled together on a winter's night. Closest is necessary for survival and normal, but getting close is a risk of getting hurt. So again, when you open up and you become more vulnerable to people, there's that option that they might hurt you. There's entire movie plots based on this idea. Our culture has kind of built into it that saying I love you is such a big deal. That's such a huge milestone in a relationship when you say that. And that's because it can feel really vulnerable. So when it comes to emotions, although they can be really wonderful, there's also some things that can be scary about them. So the next thing we want to look at is we know we have these emotions, we know that they're natural and that we're supposed to have them, and they send us messages, and that's great, and somehow they get bottled up. So how does that happen? So first of all, when we have an incongruence in the way that we're thinking and feeling, or the way that we're acting and feeling, our minds will automatically try to justify that discrepancy. And so that's one way they get bottled. Another way that they get bottled is through cultural expectations. So if you receive messages growing up that it's not okay to cry, or that when you show your emotions, you're showing too much of yourself, things like that, can kind of be a subconscious way of you learning from childhood that emotions aren't safe. They're not supposed to be let out. So to a certain extent, we need to be safe with how much we show our emotions to other people. And at the same time, when we go overboard with that, that's when it can start to be problematic. So one helpful way to try to introduce how emotions can best fit our daily needs is looking at what's called the wise mind. So in the blue circle of this Venn diagram here is what's called the rational mind. So this is the part of our brain that looks at facts, it looks at figures, it looks at logic, it looks at things intellectually. It helps us plan. The emotional mind is more of pure emotion. It's very reactive. It tells us how we're feeling in the moment, and it uses core psychological needs to provide information, not facts from the outside world. So combining these two different things, we get the wise mind. So you can use your emotional mind that's giving you direction as to how to make sense of your environment and of your thoughts, and also of how to balance that emotional piece with the facts that are going on around you. So emotions can really help make our decisions for us more than we would like to admit. People who've had damage to the part of their brain where emotions are created and regulated, well, where they're created, have a hard time making decisions. So if you put 3 different types of chocolate in front of them, white chocolate, milk chocolate, dark chocolate, they can tell you the properties of the different types of chocolate. They could tell you the pros and cons of each one, but when it says, okay, pick which one you want, if their emotional mind isn't there to say, ooh, I want this one, then they can't make a decision. So as much as facts and reason can influence the decisions that we make, it's really the emotions that are guiding what we do. So the reason for that, we can look at the way that the brain is structured. So this green and blue area of this picture is what's called the limbic system. And this is the emotional center of the brain. And it's more of a primitive part of the brain. Parts of your brain that are further to the back of your head are more primitive than what's at the front. The front of your brain is called the executive system. So executive functioning is in charge of planning, making decisions, things like that. So when you have an emotion come up, it'll come up, and then it gets to the front part of your brain, and then that part of your brain tries to decide what it's going to do about it. But the thing about it is that the limbic system works twice as fast as the frontal lobe. So we get information twice as quickly from our emotional mind than we do from our logical mind. Got a little graphic there. All right. So another way to understand this, the way that logic and emotions work together in our brains, is people riding elephants. So the human brain is like the rider who sits upon the elephant. And when someone's riding an elephant, they get the impression that they're steering it, they're telling it where to go. But what's really happening is the elephant goes where it wants to go, and the person just justifies it. So an elephant walks into, we see this person on the left, getting squirted in the face with water. They probably weren't going for that. They probably weren't asking the elephant to go fill its nose with water and then spray it in their face. But it's fun, and they could justify how they got there. And that's kind of how our brains work in justifying our emotions to fit with the facts that we want them to. So this is, again, another reason why we want to learn how to feel our emotions and utilize them in the best way possible. Because when they get bottled up, they get all mixed up. So why would we want to let them out? So living in harmony with emotions allows us to feel connected to ourselves and connected to other people. Feeling over-controlled can really zap our energy. It can make us lose concentration or focus. It can be harder to study. And expressing your emotions allows you to say what you need. You can get your needs met in a better way by doing this. Another reason is because resistance actually takes energy. Historians and ancient philosophers used to call emotions passions, like they were something that were passive, that happened to you. Nowadays we call them emotions. So they're emotion, like there's motion to them, which I think can be a better way to understand them, because it gives you some empowerment with it. There's something that you can do with that emotion. It's not something that just happens to you. But at the same time, purely resisting something doesn't make it go away. So we're going to try, if you would like to participate, we're going to go through a short guided meditation on saying yes to your emotions. So at first, I'll ask you to say no to an emotion, and then I'll guide you to how to say yes to it. And you could just notice that how each one changes in the way it feels. Okay. Sitting quietly, close your eyes and take a few full breaths. Bring your mind to a current situation that elicits a reaction of anger, fear, or grief. It may be a rift with your partner, the loss of a loved one, a power struggle, a chronic illness, a hurtful behavior that you now regret. The more fully you get in touch with the charged essence of this story, the more readily you can access the feelings in your heart and throughout your body. What is it about the situation that provokes the strongest feelings? You might see a particular scene in your mind, hear words that were spoken, recognize a belief you hold about how the situation reflects on you or what it means for your future. Be especially aware of the feelings in your stomach, chest, and throat. In order to see firsthand what happens when you resist experience, begin by experimenting with saying no. As you connect to the pain you feel in the situation you have chosen, mentally direct a stream of no at that feeling. No to the unpleasantness of fear, anger, shame, or grief. Let the word carry the energy of no, rejecting, pushing away what you were experiencing. As you say no, notice what this resistance feels like in your body. Do you feel tightness, pressure? What happens to the painful feelings as you say no? What happens to your heart? Imagine what your life would look like if, for the next few hours, weeks, and months, you continued to move through the world with the thoughts and feelings of no. Take a few deep breaths and let go by relaxing through the body, opening your eyes or shifting your posture a bit. Now take a few moments to call to mind again the painful situation you'd gently note. You'd previously chosen, remembering the images, words, beliefs, and feelings connected with it. Direct a stream of the word yes at your experience. Agree to the experience with yes. Let the feelings float, held in the environment of yes. Even if there are waves of no, fear or anger that arise with the painful situation or even from doing this exercise, that's okay. Let these natural reactions be received in the larger field of yes. Yes to the pain. Yes to the parts of us that want the pain to go away. Yes to whatever thoughts or feelings arise. Notice your experience as you say yes. Is there softening, opening, and movement in your body? Is there more space and openness in your mind? What happens to the unpleasantness as you say yes? Does it get more intense? Does it become more diffuse? What happens to your heart as you say yes? What would you experience in the next few hours, weeks, and months to come if you could bring the spirit of yes to the inevitable challenges and sorrows of life? Continue to sit now, releasing the thought and resting in an alert, relaxed awareness. Let your intention be to say a gentle yes to whatever sensations, emotions, sounds, or images may arise in your awareness. So did you all notice any differences between saying yes, saying no to those emotions? Notice any changes in the resistance? Maybe? Okay. Well, I think when it comes to exploring your emotions, it can be helpful to practice exercises such as this to kind of see what it's like to treat your emotions differently. What it's like when you try to shove your emotions in a corner or when you just let them be as they are. And again, another reason that we call them feelings is that when we experience an emotion, we actually feel it physically. And there's been research that shows that, like in brain scans, MRIs, and things like that, that when people experience physical pain, their brain lights up the same way as when they experience emotional pain. So as far as your brain is experiencing it, pain is pain. So if we compare emotional pain to physical pain, how do we take care of our physical pain? And how would that be different with how we take care of our emotional pain? Okay, so the next thing to look at when trying to figure out why we would want to let our emotions out of the bottle is that sometimes when we push our feelings down too much, when we do end up having a feeling, it feels like it's flooding. It comes on too strong. So if this is something that you experience, the first thing you want to do is identify your triggers. What is it that brought that emotion on? And then figuring out there what you want to do with it. Okay, so now we're going to look at different ways to manage emotions. So once you do allow yourself to start feeling some emotions, what are some ways of managing some of the stress that might come along with that? So this again is going back to facial expressions and how they relate to our emotions. There's research on changing your facial expression and how that can change your emotion. So we have another clip to watch.
Discoveries, it completely surprised me. And that's what I like most in research, is when you learn something you didn't know you're going to learn. That's very different from research where you prove something you think you already know. You have to do that too, because maybe you were wrong. But when you discover something you didn't expect, that's really exciting. And what we discovered, published this in more than 20 years ago, made the front page of the New York Times. We didn't kill anybody. What it did was show that if you put on your face one of the universal expressions, you will turn on the physiology of emotion. You will begin to experience that emotion. So the face is not simply a display system that tells you what's happening inside me. I can self-generate any emotion by making the movements on my face. Now, some of them are harder to make than others, and wouldn't you know it, the one that's hardest to make is the one that turns on enjoyment, because a smile alone won't do it. You have to be able to activate one of the muscles around the eyes, and only about 10% of the people we've tested can do it. We are just beginning.
So I think one of the difficult parts about what he said is that enjoyment can be one of the most difficult to kind of bring upon yourself. So we'll also go into more about how to access emotions that you want to tap into that might be a little bit more difficult. Another way to manage your emotions is to change your body language. So this is a Charlie Brown comic strip. In the first little box, he's looking down at the ground, and he says, "This is my depressed stance." And the next one says, "When you're depressed, it makes a lot of difference how you stand. The worst thing you could do is straighten up and hold your head up high, because you'll start to feel better. If you're going to get any joy out of being depressed, you've got to stand like this." So there's also been research on power poses and how that can impact how you're feeling. If you're not feeling very confident, putting yourself in a pose that represents power or feels powerful in your body, so like standing like this and kind of being a superhero, can really actually elicit confidence. Going into a job interview and keeping your head up and keeping your body posture and showing something in your body that communicates confidence can help increase that in you. And very similarly, the same way, when you're feeling sad and you're feeling lonely and you curl up into a ball, that can be another signal to your body to continue to be curled up into a ball and feel sad and lonely and whatever other emotions accompany that. Something else that's a great way to try to manage emotions when things feel overwhelming is to change your breathing. So we have a breathing exercise we're going to try. I think this is our last clip. Okay. So if you'd like to try this now, feel free. If not, that's okay too. He's stuck.
The famous 4-7-8 breath, the relaxing breath that I teach to all patients and doctors and students and friends, another yoga breathing technique. In this, you try to keep your tongue in the yogic position, touching the tip of the tongue to the ridge of tissue just behind your upper front teeth, like that, and try to keep it there the whole time. You breathe in quietly through your nose to a count of 4, and you hold your breath for a count of 7, and then blow air out forcefully through your mouth. Helps if you purse your lips out and you make a whoosh sound when you do that. So the exercise begins by letting all the air out through your mouth. Then you close your mouth, breathe in silently to a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 7, out through your mouth audibly to a count of 8, and you will repeat this for 4 breath cycles. Looks like this. That's it. You must do this at least twice a day. You can do it more frequently if you want, but never more than 4 breath cycles at one time, at least for the first month. After a month, if you're comfortable with it, you can increase to 8 breath cycles, and that's the absolute maximum. It's desirable to slow the whole exercise down as you practice it. What limits you is how long you can comfortably hold your breath, but as you practice that, you'll get better and better at it.
Okay, so there's a lot of physiological stress responses that we experience when we're stressed out. Heart rate may increase, you may start sweating, may have difficulty concentrating. So this is kind of a way to counteract that. It's intentionally using your body and your physical self to signal to your mind that you're in a comfortable, safe place. So the way that it does that is shifting your breathing affects your parasympathetic response. So what that does is oxygen consumption decreases, you breathe more slowly, your heart rate goes down, your blood pressure goes down, your muscle tension decreases, and you feel more relaxed overall. So this is also a technique that people can try if you're having a difficult time falling asleep, because it really helps your body decompress. Something else about it is that it's kind of a distraction. So when you're counting how many breaths that you're taking in and out, your mind can't be as focused on what you're going to do tomorrow or something that happened during the day. So another way to manage emotions is to distract yourself. So here at K-State, we've got a lot of sports and a lot of activities, so things you can always do on campus, reading a book, or just getting out in public, even if it's just people watching or window shopping, something like that. Movie night can be a way to kind of tap back into those facial expressions. So watching a movie, a funny movie or a really happy movie, can be a way that you can try to get your face into that enjoyment pose that he was talking about earlier. That's more difficult to get into. But if you're trying to tap into that emotion of joy, watching a movie that will elicit that from you can be a way to not only distract yourself, but to tap into that emotion a little bit more. All right, so we've talked about how they get bottled and how to manage them when you start to experience them a little bit more. Now we're really going to go a little bit more into how to let them out of the bottle without them feeling so overwhelming. All right, so the first thing you have to do is give yourself permission to feel your emotions. If you notice that if you get really sad and you start crying, if you notice that resistance coming in, trying to fight back tears, or if you get really angry and you just kind of shove it down and you don't address it again in a healthier way, then that's not really feeling your feels. You got to feel your feels. You got to let yourself do it. Because the thing about it is that emotions, again, you can move them around, but you can't make them go away. So if you push them down in one area, they may come up in another way. So another technique when you're allowing yourself to feel your feelings is called riding the wave. So something that a lot of people experience when they haven't experienced a lot of emotions before, when they haven't given themselves that permission, is that they have this fear that once they start feeling this feeling, it's not going to stop. So if you can, instead of going in with that perspective that it's going to overpower you, and go in instead with the perspective that emotions are like a wave, and you want to ride on top of the wave. You don't want to get caught up underneath it. And so the way to do that is to, again, notice what sensations come up in your body when you're feeling that emotion. Identify what action urges come up. What do you want to do when that feeling comes up for you? And then try to name what that emotion is. And it may be more than one. So as you're noticing that emotion, allow yourself to feel it and express it without judging yourself. And this can be really tricky because we've received a lot of messages not to feel certain ways. So if you're feeling jealous over something and you don't feel like you should be feeling jealous, telling yourself, stop it, you shouldn't be feeling jealous, isn't going to make you feel any less jealous. It's just going to add guilt on top of that. So try not to judge whatever emotion comes up. And then to ride the wave, take some deep breaths and use your body to try to be open to the emotion. So opening your hands and your feet so you're in an open position, keeping both feet on the ground, and just allowing yourself to be in that emotion for the moment, knowing that it'll eventually pass. I imagine that all of us in this room have had some pretty powerful emotions, and at this moment it doesn't seem like any emotion is overtaking anyone in here. So again, keeping that knowledge that just like a wave, it comes in, it feels powerful, and it'll go back out. It's not going to stay here forever. So other ways to let emotions out is to talk to somebody about it. So keeping in mind the things that we just touched on, you want to make sure that if you do decide to share your emotions with people, that they're not going to bring that judgment in as well, and that they'll just allow you to safely express your emotions without telling you that you need to do something about it. Another way to let your emotions out are to journal about them. So just writing them down and getting the emotion out can be helpful just in the moment as a way to cope with it. And it can also be helpful to reflect on what some of those emotions were. Because our emotions change, and it's hard to sometimes see in retrospect The way I feel about something today that happened a year ago may not have been the way I felt about it when it actually happened. So when you can have an idea of how your emotions change, it might give you a better self-awareness of what you want to do with emotions when they do come up. Other things that you can try are mindfulness meditation. So mindfulness is a way of intentionally directing your attention to a specific thing. So it can be to a specific thought, if it's something like, I'm okay, or I'm at peace, and just focusing on those words. It can be something that you focus on physically. It can be a sensation in your body, or it can be something in the room. It could be the lighting in this room, or the temperature, or the way the air conditioning sounds. So that brings yourself into the present moment without feeling like you have to do something about your emotion when it comes up. Because a lot of times emotions, what we do with them is we try to reflect on something that happened in the past to try to make sense of them, or they put us in a place where we feel like we have to do something to change what the outcome's going to be in the future. So allowing yourself to sit more in the moment with the emotion can help you better understand it, and it can also start to feel more normal. It can start to feel more common, that when an emotion comes up, it's not a scary thing or an overpowering thing, it's an everyday thing. And so the more used to it you get to feeling emotions like that, the easier it is to tolerate when they become stronger. Other things to try could be yoga, Tai Chi, prayer, or counseling, or anything else that really taps into focusing on things in the moment and resolving things for you, so taking care of yourself. Other ways to do that, making sure that you take care of yourself, exercising, could be reading, meditating, spending time with friends, writing about it, or even just relaxing. So as you start to introduce being more emotionally expressive in your life, just like anything else, you have to practice. It's not easy. It's not something that comes along. Our emotions work very similar to our physical bodies. So if your emotional muscle hasn't been built up, it's going to take some time before it feels natural for your emotions to be tapped into. So there's one last thing that I wanted to read about emotions and how to deal with them. So this is something that was written by a man named Jon Kabat-Zinn, and he does a lot of work with mindfulness. So this is his own personal experience with his own emotions. I hate finding cat dishes in the kitchen sink along with ours. I'm not sure why this pushes my buttons so strongly, but it does. I have taken to experimenting with my reactions at the kitchen sink by watching them very closely without acting on them. I can report that my initial findings of revulsion is not all that bad, and if I stay with it, breathe with it, and permit myself to feel it, it actually goes away within a second or two. I have also noticed that it is the sense of betrayal, of being thwarted in my wishes, that makes me mad, much more than the cat food itself. So I discover it's not really the cat food itself that's the source of my anger. It's that I'm not feeling listened to and respected. Very different from the cat food. So I've stopped taking it personally. When I really don't want cat food in the sink, I roll up my dishes and clean the dishes in that moment. Roll up my sleeves and clean the dishes in that moment. Otherwise, I just leave them there and go away. We no longer have fights about it in my family. In fact, I find myself smiling now when I do come across the offending objects in the sink. After all, they've taught me a lot. So when you do figure out what some of those triggers are, tracing them back to what is actually sparking that emotion can help lead to figuring out ways to diffuse it. So in his situation, his family members were leaving cat food dishes in the sink, even though he told them he didn't like it. And when they kept doing it, he felt disrespected. So tapping more into, it's just a dish with cat food on it. It's not that big a deal. It's not an intention of someone to disrespect me or hurt me. then he was able to move through those emotions a little bit more. So, again, you'll want to make sure that you practice these things a little bit more, but that's all I had for you. Do y'all have any questions? Okay, well, thanks for coming in today, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.